Alright, I'm making a video on cutting down some aluminum platens to a smaller size. The reason why I'm doing this is, if you look at this pallet, this is the pallets from Printex. As you can see, you can't get the tape off them anymore. This pallet right here probably took 20 minutes minimum just to get it to that point. So what we did was we went out and bought all new Action Engineering style pallets with the correct rubber on there that I can get the tape off no matter what. So I'm going to cut these down to a youth size. One second, I'm going to lower the music. Well, thanks to Brian at Middletown Inc. Pink Spot, as many people know him. He gave me the best advice on how to go about cutting these. I don't have a table saw, which would have been preferable, so I have to do it with a skill saw. Now, I went out and bought a carbide tip blade, as Brian suggested. Doesn't have to be the fancy, very, very expensive blades, believe it or not, and he was correct. I bought a basic, cheap carbide blade. Now, what I did was I measured out the distance from the blade to the edge of the fence, which is 1 3/8 inches, and then I added on the amount I want to cut off. All total, I get 3 7/8. So I just put 2 marks, one there, one there. That gives me the spot to clamp down my piece of wood as a fence for the saw to ride along. I had clampable clamp fences for a skill saw, but they're much too big for this, so I just use a piece of wood and 2 clamps. Clamp it onto my lines, my marks. Front, one in the back. Now I have a fence for the skill saw to ride along. I originally tried having the fence along the inside edge of this saw's fence, figuring I'd have more stability with a bigger base. But for some reason, the blade being so far away from the fence, it wanted to twist out. So I reversed it, and now I'm running on very close to the fence with the blade, and it works much, much better. Next thing you want to do is, I'm using white lithium, spray right down about where the saw is going to cut. That'll help keep everything lubed and a little bit cooler. Now, one thing as you notice, I'm doing this on the press, clamping it right in. Ideally, I don't want to do that, but it's the easiest way to stabilize this platen while I cut it. Now, I have the whole back of the press protected with plastic. This thing spits out a ton of metal shavings, and if you get any metal shavings in any of the motors, you're going to have a problem. Now, another thing is, I make 2 cuts. I put a fence on both sides here, and then I cut one, I reverse it, and I cut the other. What you want to do is, I recommend using a basic skill saw like this. Allow this skill saw to cool off in between platens. Don't let it overheat. Don't let the blade get way too hot. That'll definitely help you out. I've never cut metal this thick before with a skill saw, and I was pleasantly surprised. It goes through it pretty much like butter. A lot easier than you would expect. It doesn't bind. It doesn't kick. It will chatter a little bit, which is probably to be expected, and you just push it slow. Don't overdo it. Don't force it. Let the saw work its way through. And if you think you're getting too hot, or if it's starting to chatter too much, back up and start over again. Other than that, I think that's about it. Once I'm done cutting Once I'm done cutting the strips, ripping the pallets down, I'm going to put the same blade back onto my chop saw over there at a 45-degree angle with a little stop block so I get the identical cuts, and I'm just going to nip the corners to 45s. No need to have them at radius like this, which would be a lot of work. So as long as I nip the corners, pretty good to go. And if you do not have access to a die grinder, whether through your air compressor or some other electric die grinder, you can always buy one of these rigs. Goes right into a drill. You buy the pads, whatever pad, and put it on there, and then smooth out your surfaces after you're done. You'd be surprised though, this thing does leave a pretty darn smooth edge when it's done, except for just a little bit on the corners. Just a little bit of work with this and you're good to go. Now I'll do a real quick cut here, and hopefully my iPad doesn't get covered in metal shavings, just to show you how easy this is. One very important thing. Face shield. Gotta have it. And here we go. And there you have it. Cut down aluminum platen. No problem.